Yeah, I love the simplicity of what you're saying, and a lot of the people I work with and support and have known over the years, it's such a simple concept for us to get our head around, but to do it sometimes is very difficult because of us getting in our own way.
And I'm talking in a positive way, to create something which was not in the standard of what the Communist Party designed for all of us. We were very frustrated at my high school at that time because we had few of our teachers who would still behave in that unethical way, creating a corrupt educational system. The other point is that for years after that, I continued through this inertia trying to prove, which with the wisdom of the age and different leadership experience over years, I also learned it's futile. You don't have to prove anything.
And what I'm hearing from you, which is reassuring, is I think there are many people out there who maybe seek feedback, seek support, from around them. It's a different thing to be ready to receive it. And it's a different thing to be able to act upon it, as you were doing.
If people could vote, would they choose me? Why would I be their choice? So if my husband would choose again, would he choose me as a wife? If my friends would choose, would they choose me as their friends? If my team would choose, would they choose me as their leader?
Hello, and welcome to Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. In each episode of the show, we hear the insightful confessions of a successful leader who wants to inspire others to live their professional and personal dreams. I am always keen to hear your feedback, particularly in relation to the kinds of leaders you would like me to invite onto the show in future. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rich insights from our special guest. Hello and welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. I'm delighted to welcome Angela Cretu on the show today. Angela, welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of your community today. I'm really looking forward to a conversation that hopefully will add new perspective, new insights from my experience, from your view of leadership, Andrew, and create an engaging dialogue together.
And we're looking forward to it. We're going to have about half an hour, 40 minutes together today. So why don't we start by the audience learning a bit more about who you are. Just tell us your sort of story, just in brief summary.
I'm a woman at her prime. I'm turning 50 this year.
Congratulations.
And I see it as a privilege to be able to be at this age and tell lots of stories from my fascinating journey through life and through my career. I've been, after several roles, commercial roles in different companies, I joined Avon, and from that moment, my life has changed for 25 years. I lived and worked in different countries around the world, in the US, in Russia, in Turkey, Serbia. I worked with communities in Philippines, in South Africa, in Latin America. I have had the chance, the opportunity to find my purpose of empowering women and follow that compass ever since. So from the grassroots of being a sales manager, I ended up being the global CEO of the company. From a Romanian, young female Romanian, from an ex-communist country where nobody would have dreamt even to cross the borders, to become a global citizen and have the chance to learn so many diverse cultural nuances and learn so many thousands of amazing life stories for women around the world. I would call this a privilege and something to be extremely proud of now when I'm at the midpoint of my life, looking forward to continue exploring new ways to add value.
Thank you. And what our audience is always interested in is almost the personal side of individuals. Well, many of the leaders that come onto the show, obviously have very successful careers. But what about when you're not working? What is it that you spend your time doing?
I'm a mom of a teenager, and for every mom out there, our hands are full, not only when our kids are toddlers, toddlers, but as well when they turn into the teenage years. And I'm enjoying every day to rediscover the world through my son's lenses. I am passionate about traveling, skiing. I'm an avid amateur learner of neuroscience. I love enabling, connecting people, and find new ways to co-create values with my friends. So it's not just professional life; it's through all other activities. I'm really looking to create a meaningful, yes. So to create relationships that are bringing a little bit more, yes, to those around ourselves.
I'm fascinated from what you said there about obviously this girl from Romania and the journey that you've had. But tell us a bit more about those childhood experiences and how they informed your early leadership style.
I mean, you would need to imagine. I'm not sure for how many people in the audience, what I'm saying sounds familiar. Yet, during communist years, especially communism, especially in Romania, we lived we had a very restrictive access to information. Everything was uniform, so there was no issue with equality. If it's something that I remember as positive, is that I've never felt less of a boy being a girl. Yeah, we're all equal. Yet that uniformization really cut the right to self-expression. And there was any ambition, any attempt to create something that would stand out versus others. And I'm talking in a positive way, to create something which was not in the standard of what the Communist Party designed for all of us, was heavily penalized. And for my generation and for my parents, it was quite a dramatic period of our lives. And I think there are lots of learning I have from that period of time, from very good stories to those who have reshaped the way I am today. And now looking back, I realize that it's it's extreme responsibility that we really need to take as adults and as citizens, to make sure that the environment for our kids, it's a nourishing and it's a enabling one for them to have opportunities, yes, to create progress at the end for the entire society. So communism, for my generation, was something I would hope never to encounter ever in my life.
And what was it then about? So you obviously grew up in the 70s and then a teenager in the 80s around that. So what can you particularly remember about that childhood experience shaped by that environment that enabled you to become a successful leader early in your career?
Well, I'll tell you an experience that have given me both attributes that I could use to be successful, but as well attributes that have been, in a way, my deterrents, and I had to tackle, yes, over time. And I would tell a story, and for you in premiere, Andrew, because it's a story nobody has asked me this kind of question so far, but it's a story which I find for me is really that created. It was a pivotal moment in my life, and as well in my own evolution as a human being and as a leader later on. So I was a teenager, not even 15 just yet, and we were just when we almost ended communism, and it was those really turbulent years, and we were very frustrated at my high school at that time because we had few of our teachers who would still behave in that unethical way of creating a corrupt educational system, and it was having a heavy impact on our own development and our own academic evolution. So I tried initially, I felt this is so unjust and this is so not fair. I tried initially to go to the high school director, the principal, to create a memo. I tried to speak with some of my colleagues. Of course, it was not just me. There were many of us expressing their frustration. And I said, look, we have to do it in the right way. Why don't we create a memo with lots of signatures from people with the evidence that they have gathered? Then let's go to the city hall. The city hall would govern the way schools were operated. So what was funny was that, actually at that time was not funny at all. It's funny now, is that what I initially thought it's going to be just a team of 7 kids. Yes, or that we thought it's representative for our generation. It ended up that more than 1,000 kids showed up in the front of the city hall. So it became viral without the social media. Wow. So people heard that we created a memo, that we took signatures. So lots of kids from all the high schools in the city came to the city hall, in front of the city hall. So the police came because it was an unauthorized protest. Mm-hmm. So it was like in those movies, like in those cartoons. I could see the police coming in. I was just about to enter and meet the mayor. And I could see they were actively asking, like, who organized this? And all the hands were finger pointing till they came to me. And imagine, I'm not such a tall person, but they were even surprised when they saw this tiny little girl, but didn't stop them. They arrested me. So they called my father to come to take me from the police. I had to do lots of declarations, like who helped me in organizing these protests, was it political motivated, who was behind this movement. I mean, they wouldn't believe this was the natural, the way frustration accumulated for lots of my colleagues from my entire generation, from my high school and those around. The thing was, and this is the moment when the next day I was called in front of the high school, so all the professors gathered together. It was a concilium of professors, together with the principal and all the others. So they called me, and then one of the professors, who was the tutor of my class, and she was teaching language and literature. And she said exactly those words. She should be exmatriculated. This was a top school, yes, in my city. There was no other better than this one. She should be moved to another high school because she, how did she dare, yes, to question our authority and question our ethics, and she should be moved, and she doesn't deserve any chance. And look at her at the end. She's coming from a broken house. At that time, divorced couples were seen very badly by society. So because my parents divorced, they already made the assumption that I'm not going to end well. And she organized this protest on the street, and this is where she goes. So those were the words. Of course, you can imagine, for a little girl, that was pretty traumatic. I was lucky because I was going to all these math and physics Olympiads, and I was extremely good in sciences, that those other professors immediately jumped into the discussion to balance this position. And of course, at the end, the situation at the school somehow closed the case, and I could continue my studies. Yet for me, I couldn't remember what the other professor said. I would only loop in my head again and again and again and again what this specific professor said. And I was so ambitious to prove I'm not going to end up on streets, and even if I'm coming from a broken home, I'm not a broken person, and I can succeed to be better than what she predicted I will be. And the funny ending of the story is that after years of me tormenting myself on how to meet her again and show her that I'm okay now, especially after I became student of one of the best faculties, best universities, which is economics, cybernetics. So I thought, okay, now I have already proved, I'm already about to finish this university. So I wish I was praying, thinking that I wish I would have the chance to meet her again and show her I'm not there. And like in the movies, I actually had that chance once I was in a train going back to my native city where all this story happened, back from my university. And there she was in the train, just two train compartments away from me. And I said, oh my God, this is the chance. I'm going to go to her. So I went to her, and then my heart was pounding so fast. And I said, okay, that's my closure. That's my closure. And I said, hello, Mrs. Her name. How are you? Do you remember me? And then she looked at me and she started smiling and she said, oh, of course I remember you. You're such a good kid. So obviously she didn't. So that was my biggest lesson in life. One is what other people say, they might even forget about it the very next day. So clearly she didn't even remember that event as being a traumatic event. And for me, it was my tormenting, vicious loop of thoughts for many years. And the other point is that for years after that, I continued through this inertia trying to prove, which with the wisdom of the age and different leadership experience over years, I also learned it's futile. You don't have to prove anything. Yes, it's just about tangible value co-created with people around yourself. So it doesn't have to, come as a statement towards anyone. Yes, 'cause people are only looking at the end of, okay, what's in it for us all, what's the value, and not about what one or another claim about himself. So that's the story. I've never told this story. Of course, all my classmates, or my previous classmates and my generation would know about it. It was quite a big one at those years. But it's the very first time I'm telling it in this format to you, to show her that indeed the childhood events, in a way or another, would influence the way we shape our own choices. So the good side of it is that my ambition is to learn, to take all changes, is to improve my education, really got higher. But the flip side of it was that for years I was the victim of my own kind of the way my brain reset, the way I perceived, yes, my chances, and how others would look at me.
Well, I appreciate you telling the story, and I could feel the emotion as you were telling it. So thank you for sharing it for the first time. And actually, even though many people that are listening to this and watching this will have different stories to you, there'll be a similar theme in terms of this feeling and need to prove oneself to, whether that's to a parent, whether it's to, an authority figure, whatever it might be. And it drives them for many years and even into their 50s. And they don't get to the point sometime that you got to, where you recognize actually this was futile. So I really appreciate you sharing it. I guess what I'm interested in, Angela, from what you've said there, how did it affect you to have that drive and that ambition to prove that you were worthy, if you like, of being, this person? How did it affect you in relationships up until the point where you realized actually there was no need to do it anymore? How are you showing up in relationships?
I mean, in my relationships with people around myself, I was lucky. I've had very good friends very early in my life, and they are still my friends today. I've met my husband when I was 14, and we are married now for 27 years. So I've been lucky to have people around myself who have seen me from who I was, and I didn't have to prove them anything. So somehow this trauma in a way influenced only my professional ambition initially.
Mm-hmm. And therefore professional relationships. Yeah. I'm interested in that as well. So for example, whether it was a key stakeholder or an investor or whatever it might be, how did that manifest
I
before you
would,
realize
I
it?
mean, I remember you are absolutely right, Andrea. I mean, first years, being part of a global company, you would have lots of attention as an employee from the very early years in terms of support for one's development. So I would have mentor, coaches, peer bodies. I would have development programs. I've never missed those in the 25 years. And part of this, we would have this 360 degrees feedback. So every year I would get anonymous feedback from my uplines, from my peers, and from the moment I had managerial roles from my teams. And we would always use those both as a source of energy, but as a source of rebalancing our behaviors in a way that we maximize our impact. And for years, I couldn't get rid of the feedback I would get from, especially from uplines, that I'm having a self-deprecating, positioning, and that I should get rid of it. And I couldn't see it for years. I thought, okay, that's my way to be. But they would keep, and so they would keep telling me, and with this gentle nudge, you really need to work on your presence, on the way you connect with people. So it doesn't look like you are apologizing for being there.
Thank you.
So
And
I learned over years.
yeah.
But this was for I think my first 5 years or so of my career. The more confidence I got, the more experiences I got moving from a market to another, being exposed to different cultures, that self-deprecation. But I would say it turned more into a deep sense of humility, but never of losing the self-trust.
Sure.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing from you, which is reassuring, is I think there are many people out there who maybe seek feedback, seek support, from around them. It's a different thing to be ready to receive it. And it's a different thing to be able to act upon it, as you were doing. So over the years, how do you sustain that mindset? Because we have these negative thoughts that are trying to take us away from trusting ourselves. How do you maintain that level of trust in yourself over time?
It's something I built. It's coming with learning. I mean, I've always, even today, after so many years, almost 30 years of professional career, being more than 4 years as a CEO of a global company, I still would ask myself quite often, not every day, but there was no week where I wouldn't ask myself in a very sober way, if people could vote, would they choose me? Why would I be their choice? So if my husband would choose again, would he choose me as a wife? If my friends would choose, would they choose me as their friends? If my team would choose, would they choose me as their leader? And I don't ask it in a form of a self-doubt, but in the form of feeding my self-trust. Because with that question, one is I keep my appetite to learn at a very high level, and in a positive, energetic, yes way. And I equally, it forces me to accept and be comfortable with areas I will never excel. That's also a self-trust. Yes, a good basketball player will never be a prime ballerina. And we have to make choices. We cannot, as a leader, you can't score. You can't have top scores at all attributes of leadership out there. I would be so scared if I got anyone's evaluation, a 360 as an example, or a psychometrics that shows like a perfect score and everything. That's not. I would be scared to work with such person, if that is a person and not some bloody AI. But as a human, I think self-trust and self-confidence comes as well with the acknowledgement of areas where at best we would be mediocre. Yes, the essence is to be aware of those and make sure they don't become derailers or harm others. That's it. And openly acknowledge them and look for people to complement those skills. Yeah.
I love the
those
simplicity.
decisions.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of what you're saying. And a lot of the people I work with and support and have known over the years, it's such a simple concept for us to get our head around, but to do it sometimes is very difficult because of us getting in our own way. So before we go into maybe some advice you can give to the audience out there, just pick one time for me in your career where maybe what had been a strength of yours up until that point turned out actually to be a big derailer because of either a key relationship or a key situation. And therefore it was that realization that sometimes I have to be conscious about overplaying this strength sometimes.
Oh, there are quite a few, because you see these weaknesses and strengths, they're all attributes as behaviors, preferences, the way we connect to the others, energy up and down. I see it many of the times like that DJ, I don't know, maybe the analog DJ would do tune up and down.
Yeah.
Different lines of music, pending the situation, pending the people you are working with, pending the context. So I will tell you a few examples. One, looking chronologically, my lack of patience, my keen desire to get things moving has helped me a lot till I when I got my first role as general manager. So after becoming a general manager and then leading one country, a group of country, a cluster, and then an entire global portfolio, that impatience doesn't work any longer, because you rely on other. You are an orchestrator, you are an enable, connector, multiplier. You need to make sure that the other pieces, the other partners of yours, are fully enabled to work at their pace, and yet towards the process purpose we have together. So that lack of patience is something I had to control consciously once I got these more senior roles. This, if we take it chronologically. If I don't take it, but I take it contextually, I can tell you that my behavior as a leader in US versus my behavior as a leader in Russia, they couldn't be more different. Although essentially with my values, integrity, I was always the same. And I would give you just one example. If in US, initially I was seen as being, coming from Eastern Europe, as being too intense. And so I had to adjust the way I'm talking and connecting, and as well creating partnerships in a way that would, at the end, advance the objectives we've had together as a team. And in US, and you would know that, especially in a New York corporate environment, before making a call, it's extremely important to make visible the efforts of doing at least 3 rounds of asking everyone's opinion in a visible way. And this is seen as a strength. Yes. In Russia, once I led it, so my career took me from New York to Moscow. Yes. And in Moscow, I think somebody really was generous enough to come to me after a few days, and she told me, look, listen, in the Russian style, listen. First, stop smiling. Everyone will think you are an idiot. That's America, not Russia. Here, we don't smile even when we are drunk. Yeah, so you smile for a reason. If there is a joke, you smile. No joke, no smile. One thing, because you lose your authority. Second, stop asking people their opinion. Of course, they want you to listen to their opinion, but that happens in private, one-to-one. Once you are in a group setting, show your strength. You just say, I heard you, that's my call, and no smile. So I'm dramatizing a little bit just for you to see the contrast. Of course, life is much more diverse than that. There are many more cultural nuances, but it's also yet another example of how an attribute can be seen in the same year, 2011 in my case, yes, from being a strength to being a weakness, or from being a weakness to become again back a strength.
And what I love about what you're saying there, I see this a lot, is that willingness again to trust yourself, to say, I'm already enough. And in this present moment, knowing what I know and the insight I've gained, this is the way I need to be, but still being true to who I am, but adapting to that situation. So I'm sure the audience will be able to relate to that. Coming back to the audience, I just want to know, I've got a couple of questions left for you, Angela, but the first is, for those people that are listening out there and watching this, and they can resonate with your story about something that happened in their childhood, which still they remember, to today, and it has held them back because of what they believe the importance of that event was. What advice would you give to those people about how they can maybe channel that in some way to make sure they become a different kind of leader?
I know. I mean, I don't want to give the advice like get rid of those thoughts, because it's almost, for me, it was impossible. So it's very difficult. I don't want to be a hypocrite and tell people that they can manage themselves, but they could really look for help.
Yeah.
To find a different vector of force to take them out of this vicious spiral. It's many of the times not helpful, and there is so much energy into this negative territory that could have been used and channeled, like you beautifully say, as for so many other things, like being engaged with your life fully in this moment, and not living your life nor in the past nor in the future. But I know it's easy to say. For some people, it comes with age. For others, it comes with just other events that come to demonstrate that how futile that waste of energy was. And therefore, my advice would be to at least look for ways to feel every moment of their life, professionally and in their personal life, but that it gets their biggest engagement possible. That makes them feel excited, engaged, looking forward to create value.
Thank you, and I can relate to that as well in terms of my childhood and what happened to me. And it took me 47 years to get to a stage where I knew it was just me in my head that thought that. So thank you for that. Before we finish, you mentioned right at the start of our time together about your purpose, and that you were very clear about that, and what it is that you're going to be doing, from now on, really. So just explain to the audience a bit more about that, Angela. We'd love to hear about that.
So I decided, so first of all, to tell about this moment in my life, because many people, especially my ex-board members, they would tell me, like, why would you leave now? You are at the prime of your role. The business is really in this moment the cusp of new frontiers. We are having such a good relationship. And many as well, some of my friends as well ask me, why would I make such a change? And some people call it a crisis, like the midlife crisis. I call it one of the biggest opportunities. That exactly in the moment where you feel you finally fit your aquarium, you finally feel comfortable where you are, that's the moment to move. That's the moment to create space for other people to come and continue your work and progress everything that you've done, but as well an opportunity for me in this case to expand my knowledge, expand my connections, my joy is of life coming through the diversity of the new experiences, because I'm just 50. So just the right time to live with pride, to close with so much pride this beautiful chapter and really open new ones. And currently I'm following the same compass of empowering women. I'm an angel investor supporting female founders, extremely proud of this activity. I'm mentoring many women and girls. I'm supporting different associations as well to advocate for equality of chance for women and girls around the world. And I self-imposed a little bit of sabbatical till year end as well, with some traveling, and for me to explore where I should allocate my energy next.
And tell us a little bit, because I've got two daughters and one granddaughter. So tell us from your perspective the hope that you have for girls and women for the future.
I do have, I always say, dum spiro spero. In Latin means, as long as I breathe, I hope. I will never give up. I think there is a huge value, and I'm not talking not just the humanity value for humanity. I'm talking about economic value. We talk about more than $1 trillion of immediate economic value if we only support girls, not just access to education, but as well give them equality of chance to walk up the ladder, and not just in professional life, but as well in society. I believe that having the right mix of women and men would give us the full year-rounded perspective or on every issues that humanity is dealing with nowadays, from the violence to the sustainability. The richer perspectives around the table, the better decision will be. And this is exactly what I'm advocating: partnership. I'm advocating equality. I'm not advocating. I'm not an extreme feminist saying that women should have a quota of X or what. No, I'm looking for. I know women can handle it once they have the equality of chance. I'm not looking for equality of output. And therefore, with every intervention, with every support I'm giving women around the world, I'm nurturing, I'm feeding my hope that by the end of my life, I'm going to see a world where we have healthier mix of decision making people for our children, for society, for education, for health, and for peace.
Well, Angela, that's a lovely note to finish on. I really thank you for being on the show today. I know that many of the audience out there that have been listening and watching this would have really gained some great insight in terms of their own self-leadership, which is what we've been talking about today, but also how by doing that, they can actually lead others more effectively and then move to this purpose, which actually makes a difference in life, whatever it is for them. So thank you once again for being on the show.
Thank you for your out-of-the-box questions and a wonderful conversation, Andrew.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader. You can access all previous episodes of the show at confessionsofaSuccessfulLeader.com. If you are interested in finding out more about conscious leadership and self-coaching, just type in Andrew Tallents into LinkedIn or your favorite browser, and you'll find my contact details and all the content that you need. Until next time, don't forget to stay present, curious, and above all, conscious.